Welcome, I'm Amelia Layton Gamel. In this session, I'll be working with a page of text from Chapter 3 from the textbook titled On Course by Skip Downing. The first thing I do when given a reading assignment is count the number of pages assigned. I like to know right up front the kind of time commitment I'm dealing with. For those of you who take the same approach, Chapter 3, which is titled Discovering Self-Motivation, has 38 pages. However, in this demonstration, I'll only be working with page 77. Reading for information is very different than reading for pleasure. When I read for pleasure, I often want to read slowly and savor each section. But when I'm reading for information, especially for a class, it often isn't the type of reading I would choose or even enjoy. So I want to get all the information I need and be able to remember it so no rereading is needed. The way to do that is to read actively with a pen in hand. In this session, I will use several strategies to help myself comprehend and remember the information, but the strategy I will focus on is making connections. Let's get started. The heading of the section I'm going to read is titled Commitment Creates Method. I notice the heading is in bold orange font. That tells me the author or publisher wants me to pay attention to it. I also notice there are a couple quotes in the margins. As much as I like quotes, I'm going to skip them and stay focused on my purpose, which is to understand how a commitment to something creates a method or process for getting results. A commitment is an unbending intention, a single-mindedness of purpose that promises to overcome all obstacles, regardless of how you may feel at any particular moment. During the summer between my sophomore and junior years in college, I learned the power of commitment. I'm going to stop there. Although this paragraph uses words that I understand, I don't use many of them in my everyday talk. So before I attempt to make sense of what I've read, I'm going to swap the words out for the words I'm more familiar with. I'm going to replace unbending with the word rigid. And I'm going to replace the word intention with goal. And I'm going to swap a single-mindedness for focus. And I'm going to replace promises with guarantees. And I'm going to replace obstacles with problems. I'm going to squeeze that in here. I should mention that when I'm reading a text, I usually replace the word that I'm swapping over the top of the word that's in the text. But because the space is a little restricted here, I'm just kind of drawing lines to indicate the words I'm replacing. So now it reads like this. A commitment is a rigid goal, a focus of purpose that guarantees to overcome all problems regardless of how you may feel at any particular moment. I understand this paragraph and have a personal connection. A few years ago, there was a student on campus who had a goal to finish school. He believed that if he stayed focused, he was guaranteed to get past his difficulties. He didn't have a car and walked 2 hours to and from campus for 2 years until he was able to finish. This is a good example of an unbending intention. I'm going to add a note to myself to remember my connection. Student walking to campus. That will help me remember. It looks like Skip Downing is going to share in this section how he learned about commitment. Let's continue. That summer, I used all my savings to visit Hawaii. While there, I met a beautiful young woman, and we spent 12 blissful days together. One of my desires was to have a wonderful love relationship, so I promised to return to Hawaii during Christmas break. However, back in college, 6,000 miles away, my commitment was sorely tested. That's a word, sorely, that I wouldn't use in my everyday talk, so I'm going to replace it with the word greatly. I'm going to just try and squeeze it in right here. So now the sentence would read, however, back in college, 6,000 miles away, my commitment was greatly tested. I had no idea how in just 3 months I could raise enough money to return to Hawaii. Committed to my dream, though, I spent weeks inventing and rejecting one scheme after another. Though I didn't realize it at the time, I was actually using the wise choice process to find my best option. I have a personal connection here, too. There have been times in my life when I have spent time inventing plans or schemes to raise money. So I'm just going to jot that down. Schemes to raise money. I'll continue on. Then one day I happened upon a possible solution. I was glancing through Sports Illustrated magazine when I noticed an article written by a student athlete from Yale University. I'm going to underline this. I'm familiar with Sports Illustrated magazine, so I'm just going to note that here. Until that moment, all I'd had was a commitment. That's an important word. I remember the word commitment being in the section heading, so it must be important. When I saw that article, I had a plan. A long shot, yes, but a plan nonetheless. Maybe the editors of Sports Illustrated would buy an article about the sport I played, lightweight football. Driven by my commitment, I worked on an article every evening for weeks. Finally, I dropped it in the mail and crossed my fingers. He had a plan to write and hopefully sell an article about football to earn the money. I have a personal connection to that as well. I recall a time in my life when I decided to create artwork in hopes of selling it for the same purpose, to earn extra money. So I'm going to just make a note here that I have a personal connection with my artwork in hopes of making money. A few weeks later, my manuscript came back rejected. On the printed rejection form, however, a kind editor had handwritten, "Want to try a rewrite? Here's how you might improve your article." I spent another week revising the article, mailed it directly to my encouraging editor, and waited anxiously. Christmas break was creeping closer. I had just about given up hope of returning to Hawaii in December. Then one day, my phone rang, and the caller identified himself as a photographer from Sports Illustrated. "I'll be taking photos at your football game this weekend. Where can I meet you?" And that's how I learned that my article had been accepted. Better yet, Sports Illustrated paid me enough money to return to Hawaii. I spent Christmas on the beach of Waikiki with my girlfriend on the blanket beside me. Suppose I hadn't made a commitment to return to Hawaii. Would reading Sports Illustrated have sparked such an outrageous plan? Would I, at 20 years of age, have ever thought to earn money by writing a featured article for a national magazine? Doubtful. What intrigues me, there's one of those words again that I know what it means, but I wouldn't use it in my everyday talk. So I'm going to swap it out. Instead of using the word intrigue, I'm going to use the word fascinate. Just going to jot that here and replace it. So I would read now, "What fascinates me as I recall my experience is that the solution for my problem was there all the time. I just couldn't see it until I had made a commitment." By committing to our dreams, we program our brains to look for solutions to our problems and to keep us going when the path gets rough. Whenever you're tempted to look for motivation outside yourself, remember this: motivation surges up from commitment to a passionately held purpose. This takes me back to the heading Commitment Creates Method. It makes more sense now. Skip Downing showed us how his commitment to go to Hawaii to see a young woman prompted him to find a method or a plan how to raise money to get there. The solution was always there. He just needed the commitment to see it. A commitment prompts solutions to problems. I can see how a commitment to education prompts students to find ways to get through their challenges. While I was reading, I marked the text, swapped words for words I'm more familiar with, and made personal connections. Often students tell me they read, but can't remember the information. Let's see how well you remember some of the information from this section. Where did Skip go on his summer break? If you were thinking Hawaii, you are correct. Why did he want to return during Christmas break? To see the young woman. Go ahead and jot that right in here. How was he able to get the money to return to Hawaii? If you were thinking he submitted an article to Sports Illustrated, you are right on spot. He submitted an article to Sports Illustrated. What was learned about commitments? This is the most important question because it questions what was in the section. Commitments create methods for solutions to problems. Say that again. Commitments create methods for solutions to problems. I'll go ahead and jot that in. Commitments create methods for solutions to problems. Again, students often tell me they can read. They just can't remember the information. Although the questions we've answered here were pretty simple to recall, they were recalled because we read actively with a pen in hand, jotting notes, swapping words, making connections, and underlining important words or phrases. Try these strategies as you read to improve what you remember from the text.